standard answers your questions. From grooming, feeding, breeding to riding, just ask us anytime, and we will reply. So come and join our fun, get the help you need. We're here to give you answers. Ebony Park, with you each week.
Hey guys, welcome to Ebony Park TV. This week I've had a couple of different people ask me about what they need to vaccinate their foals with and when. And I thought I would go through a vaccine schedule for foals as well as adult horses, just so you know exactly what to vaccinate your horses with. We're really lucky here in Australia. We don't have that many diseases because we're so isolated from other countries, and so there's only a couple of different things that we need to vaccinate for, and that there are four main diseases that I would recommend you'd vaccinate your horses for. It depends on the horse, depends on your property, what you're doing with your horse as to what you're going to vaccinate for. But I thought I would go through the four main ones, tell you what they are, and then go through the vaccine schedule. So the first one is tetanus. Tetanus is usually a fatal disease, but it's present in the normal environment all the time, and your horse isn't necessarily going to get it. Usually it's from a rusty nail or something that scratched it, or something like that might cause your horse to get the tetanus bacteria into a wound, and that's when it starts producing toxins which can paralyse your horse and do all sorts of nasty things, normally fatal and really expensive to treat. So you may as well vaccinate your horse for that, just to prevent anything like that happening. So that's the first one. The next one is strangles, which is a really, really contagious disease. It's like a respiratory disease. They have lots of like gunky snot and all sorts of horrible things. It can be really nasty. There's different forms of strangles. You can get it, some horses get it worse than others, but the main reason why we vaccinate for it is because it's so contagious, and it makes them it's like a fluey cold with lots of snot and gunk coming out, so it doesn't make them feel very good. So that's that one. Usually a vaccine with tetanus and strangles will come together, because then you remember to vaccinate them both together. And there's two other ones that you can vaccinate for, but not everyone vaccinates for these two. The first one is equine herpes virus, or EHV, and the main reason why we vaccinate for this one is because, especially if you have broodmares, is because although it makes your horse a little bit sick and dull, it can cause abortions in mares. And if your mare comes into contact with it, your mare has herpes, equine herpes virus, and she comes in contact with another mare, another pregnant mare as well, it can cause what's called abortion storms. So that's the other reason why you sort of keep your brood mares isolated from other horses that might be in competition. And also make sure you keep them in small groups of like 3 or 4 mares together instead of like a whole group of pregnant mares together, because if one does have equine herpes virus and aborts, you're not going to lose every single foal in that year. And the fourth one is salmonella. Now salmonella, of course, we know is a really nasty thing to have in humans as well, if it gets out of control. So it can cause, in worst case, it can cause death, but it causes diarrhea, septicemia, and all sorts of nasty things. So if you think you need to vaccinate for it, then it's probably a good idea. So that's the 4 main diseases we have in Australia that we vaccinate against. So for a vaccination schedule, we'll start with foals. So with the foals, the first vaccine you want to give them is at about 12 weeks of age. Before this time, they're not building up their own immunity. They're sort of relying on the mother's antibodies that they've gotten from their colostrum, and at about 2 or 3 months of age is when they start when they start building up their own antibodies. So that's when you give the vaccine, and then they can have a reaction to that and build up the antibodies for it. So normally you would give, well, it depends what you decide to give your foals, but normally the main 2 you give is tetanus and strangles at 12 weeks of age, and then you give a booster 2 weeks later, and then another booster 2 weeks later. So the first booster normally is just the strangles. You don't need to give the tetanus booster. And then at 16 weeks, that's when you give them the 2 of them again, the tetanus and strangles. And then after that, you give them a yearly booster. If you have an adult horse that you don't know the vaccination history of, you don't think it's been vaccinated before, and you want to vaccinate it, you do it in the same way. You give the first injection, which is tetanus and strangles, then 2 weeks later you would give just the strangles vaccine, and then 2 weeks after that you give tetanus and strangles again. If you did want to give the herpes and salmonella vaccines, you would just give them at the first vaccine and the third vaccine. You don't need to give one in between. And then, of course, yearly boosters after that. For herpes virus, you probably give 6 monthly boosters if you're going to vaccinate all the time. With pregnant mares, what you normally do is you'd give the herpes virus vaccine on the 5th month of the pregnancy, the 7th month of the pregnancy, and the 9th month of the pregnancy. And normally the tetanus and strangles vaccine you give at least 4 weeks before she's due to foal, because then she'll have the antibodies in her colostrum to pass on to the foal. So hopefully that's not too complicated and it all makes sense to you. If you have any other questions, please log on to www.ebonyparkstud.com.au and click on the EPTV tab to submit your questions for next week. And until then, have an awesome week, and I'll see you later. Bye.